Councillor Hargrove.
I'm here, Chair.
Councillor Morris.
I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Newlands.
Here, Chair.
Very good. Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah.
Councillor Rose.
Here, Chair.
Very good. Councillor Soames. Councillor Soames. Are you present, Councillor Soames? Councillor Soames, was that you? Gerald, could you confirm if Councillor Soames is still online?
I will go through the list of attendees, Chair, and let you know.
Okay. I won't begin until we're sure we have the committee present. Councillor Soames, are you present?
She is in the list of attendees.
I'm back. Thank you.
Oh, you're there.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah, I'm
excellent.
here now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Very good. And of course, Councillor Seaton, I'm present. Right, so then. So can we now do the sharing of screens? Can we share the screen? Yeah. Yep. Can we share the screen first of all? Get that started. Michael?
Toby hasn't introduced themselves yet.
Yeah, I'm getting that in a second. Just make sure we've got the screen shared first of all.
Is that the
Michael?
screen you want, Toby?
That's great.
I can't see. Oh, there you are. Right. Okay. Right then. Again, can I ask you, the objectors, to introduce themselves, please?
Okay. We're speaking on behalf of the local community. Oh,
your name? Forgive me. Can I have your?
Yep. I'm a local architect with training in spatial planning and urban design, and I'm a representative of the Old Bermondsey Neighbourhood Forum. So that addresses on Crucifix Lane.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks to Martin for involving us recently.
Forgive me. And your colleague, can you just introduce your colleague as well?
With me is Jessica Beattie, who's a local resident landscape architect with 35 years experience working with tall buildings in the City of London, delivering high quality public realm.
Very good. Now I'm now going to begin the 3-minute countdown.
Can I just add, sorry, Martin, can I just add, also with us to field potential questions,
okay,
if any arise from the committee, are Amy Caruth is the chair of the forum, and conservation restoration expert Russell Gray, coordinator of the forum, alongside some residents also, who may or may not want to field a question, Jacobo, Sean, Jane and Chris, although I'm not sure they're all here.
Right here then. Right here. Thank you. I'm now going to ask you to begin your presentation now, and I will advise when 30 seconds remaining. You may begin now.
In objection, we'd like to highlight and invite questions on the following 4 areas where we either disagree with the officer's report or find it to be inaccurate or based on poor evidence: harm to heritage, public benefits, environmental impact, and consultation. We know that the application's additional information submitted on Friday includes some cumulative drawings and views of the proposals, which we think clarify the extreme overdevelopment being proposed, in addition to some responses to issues about microclimate, which we consider to be variously misleading and incorrect. Firstly, the proposals cause unacceptable, significant and irreversible harm to the conservation area due to the proposed extreme contrast in scale and due to the unnecessary demolition and disfigurement of key positive contributors in their settings, none of which is outweighed by the proposed public benefits, moreover, which will create a dangerous precedent for further damage to the conservation area. The proposed public benefits do not outweigh the harm. When properly analysed, they're found to be at once inappropriate, severely compromised, of poor quality, and in too many cases left to be dealt in undefined Section 106 obligations, as we've discussed already. We invite questions most urgent here on the public realm, the high quality architecture and the music venue, as well as the proposed economic benefits, retail opportunities, etc. The environmental impacts. So in addition to the wind and overshadowing, which severely compromise the public realm, we'd also like to highlight significant issues which have not been given due consideration. Things like the wider cumulative impact of the Guy's master plan, daylighting and light pollution, construction stage disruption, we've touched on briefly, air quality, congestion, a joined up delivery plan, public transport saturation, and the higher sustainability standards like the next door application 20 AP 0944. Lastly, consultation. The proposed damage to all registers of the local environment are linked to the extreme overdevelopment being applied for, whereby the cumulative developments go way beyond the densities anticipated by the site allocation policies. It was 4.9 in 2018. I should add that we perceive these allocations to be highly questionable. We look forward to them in the inspection. especially since they hid the FAR ratios in the evidence base. The officer earlier suggesting he has no understanding of the projected floor area ratio is either false or embarrassing. We'd like to highlight shortcomings in the consultation processes, for example, with the St Thomas Street framework, which did not allow for engagement on building heights in particular. The resulting developments propose to transform the St Thomas Street area beyond recognition, including the
30 seconds,
result in contravention of national, London and local policy. They also present fundamental disconnection with important local evidence bases like the social and economic benchmark by Social Life, which is not registered in the report, as well as with emerging national opinion on sustainable development in the reality of pandemics and irreversible climate change. Lastly, most importantly now, this development has been designed in all aspects hand in hand with 19 AP 0404, which has just been deferred. The landscaping...
Your time is up. Your time is up. Your time is up. If I may, forgive me. Your time is up.
Application being reconsidered.
Okay, thank you. Your time is up. I'm assuming we've now seen all the images there, Toby, am I clear? We've seen all the images, all 5 images now, I believe.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. We've then got the wider pack, which we can call on if people want.
Fair enough. That's fine. Thank you very much for your presentation. Committee members, can you indicate if you wish to ask a question? I can't see anyone in the chat. Is there a question from the committee? Is there a question?
Are we not going to hear both parties and then ask questions, Chair?
Well, I'd assume that they were going to split the time. They chose not to. I'm sure Jessica will respond to questions.
Sorry, my apologies.
Martin,
Yes.
can I ask a question, please? This is Margie.
Yes, you can, of course.
I wanted to ask if there is any additional information that the objectors would like to share with us.
Yes.
Go ahead, please. What additional information would you like to share, Toby?
We have in the same folder a series of slides that we submitted, which we can point to depending on what the question is. So we've got ones about the harm to the heritage. We've got ones about the public realm.
Why do we take the question on the harm to the heritage? Are you ready?
Yep. How would you like? What's the?
Okay. All right. Let's go. If I may go back to Councillor Margie Newens. Well, Margie Newens' question was really inviting you to add to your original presentation, but you may want to expand upon what harm do you perceive this development on the local heritage and conservation area?
I see. Well, if we could turn to one of the slides in the pack.
You might need to be more specific on that, Toby.
Yeah, but there's any of the views which look at the building from the south or from the west that we included.
Alrighty. I wonder if we could bring that on screen. Who has it? Who has the controls? If we could bring up the presentation back on the screen. Michael?
That presentation, Chair.
Yes, so say again, please.
I'll start sharing that presentation again.
Thank you,
Chair.
No, it's the one we submitted on Friday, 62 page.
Oh, that's quite large.
Okay, we can just talk to this for now if we need to. Okay, so in simple terms, I guess, as per the Victorian Society highlighted, we consider this to be significant harm, and it creates a dangerous precedent for future development in the conservation area. I can refer to a series of policies from either the London plan going down to the local plan.
Please do, Toby, please do.
Okay, first of all, I'd just like to say, you can see the relative height here compared to the context. I think we could estimate it to be like between 6 and 8 times as tall. This extremely harmful contrast is particularly visible from the south, as shown in the applicant's views, Tanner Street, Leather Market Gardens, Kirby Grove, Snowsfields and Melia Place, which we've looked at previously. Despite clear requests, no views have been provided from key positions on Melia Street and St Thomas Street. where, first of all, it's where the conservation area is first encountered and appreciated by people coming from London Bridge. It's where there's no backdrop of tall buildings now, and it's also where the key heritage assets are all visible together. So, yeah, I could from the London plan. In HC1, it says development proposals should seek to avoid harm, and 7.1.6 that they should retain and reuse buildings. 7.1.7 says that scale is a way of defining heritage significance. Now, the objections by Historic England, Save the Victorian Society, are at once talking about the demolition to the asset, but also the damage to the area due to the fact that the conservation area is defined by its small scale. So this change to the scale is the strong nature of its harm. So the London plan recognises scale as being a way that harm can happen. And in HC3, it says that local views could be given the same degree of protection as strategic views. Now, we've asked the applicants very clearly a number of times to provide these views from Mellier Street Gardens and from St Thomas's Street, and they haven't been provided. Some further policy would be in the NSP emerging SP2, where designing lower floors to directly relate to the street with an appropriate transition in scale. And point 9, enhancing local distinctiveness and heritage-led regeneration by requiring the highest possible standards of design. I'll just go quickly through it. Okay, we can go to NSP, P16 tall buildings.
Forgive me, Toby. I think it might be useful if you simply refer to the relevant policy and paragraph. That's all you need to refer to. We can keep moving forward. Okay, you don't need to read them out. I think that would be more than sufficient.
Oh, excuse me, Councillor Seaton, may I just interject? I just need to know about the document that we submitted. We understood from you the last meeting we had with you that if we submitted the documents on time, which we did, we would be allowed to, the councillors would have all of that in front of them. And I'm surprised now that they don't. And we were assured that that would be possible. So I think we need to address that, please.
Okay. I think, first of all, it had been distributed. Clearly, my question to Toby and yourself, if you're able to refer to a specific image, it is currently being shared, so it's not necessary for members to refer to their own copies. It is now on the screen.
What's on screen is a 5-page PDF, but what we're referring to is the 62-page PDF that includes the applicant views. It also includes examples of an alternative way of restoring buildings.
I follow. If I may, so that document is with officers right now, because if that's not what's on the screen, if we were able to get up the earlier document that was supplied on time, that would be very useful. And if you could refer to specific images so that we can match what you're saying with the image on the screen. Michael, do you have the earlier document that was submitted?
I do, Chair. I can try and share that now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Seaton.
It was.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Michael. Yeah.
It was a combined document for both of the applications, so you can skip to.
I'm trying to.
Page 22.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll have to.
Touch away. Give you
a second. I'll just try and find it. Just a second.
Right. You may wish to continue, Toby, whilst that's happening.
Okay, yeah. If you can get to page 22, Michael, if you can find it. It's called 3 Contrast in Scale. There's a massive model.
I won't go into the. there's no need to read the policies to us. Simply refer to the policy ident, and we could do it ourselves. I really want you just to make your key points so that the committee members can appreciate the objections which you wish to raise with us. Go ahead.
Well, apart from the ones that I mentioned in the London plan, and I just said NSP tall buildings, I would like to read it out, but I'll leave it. The other one is it's very well documented. We've talked about it previously. Is E.4.3 in the UDP about paying special regard to height and massing again.
Which page? I think I've got the screen up now. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Which page am I looking for?
That's good.
Is there a particular page, Toby, please?
You can move from, sorry, 1 second. Yep, if you want it, can you just move through 2 or 3 pages? These are the views from, actually just carry on.
Okay, forgive me, Toby, and I'm really, you must forgive us that whilst we've got the information, I really want you to give light, or your verbal submission, give light to the specific issues you want to point out to us are particularly pertinent in policy terms that you wish the committee to consider. So I need to move you along now quite quickly, if I may. Okay,
well, I think I can just conclude that as per the submissions we've given, we consider the harm, not as Michael has says, for there to be no harm, but for that harm is significant, and that we think that the possibly the greatest risk is the precedent which would be set, and how this would demonstrate like a complete disregard of the conservation area. So I've mentioned 7.8 of the London plan. I've mentioned policy E.4.3 of the unitary development plan, but the issue of harm is clearly set out in the NPPF, and we side with Historic England and Victorian Society in suggesting that this harm is not outweighed by the public benefits.
Right. Yes, that's right. And those are the 2 statutory consultees. Okay.
Are we also allowed to add the extra information from Jessica in terms of wind at this point, or is that
it's just about harm to heritage, no?
1 moment, please. I was about to ask about wind, and I see Jessica Beattie there. And indeed, yes, I'm quite interested to hear Jessica's analysis of the wind shear effects of these buildings, but particularly this building that's under consideration. Jessica, I'm interested to hear your comments.
Thank you. Well, one of the things I want to start with is the September...
Forgive me, Jessica. Just for the record here, I know the clerk hasn't quite pulled me up. Can I ask you just to introduce yourself, please? Yes.
I'm Jessica Beattie. I live on Bermondsey Street. I'm a local resident, landscape architect.
Very good. Okay. Can you just respond to my question on wind shear effect of these buildings?
Yes, if we could go to our analysis of that.
What page is that?
I think it just came up on the screen.
Okay, I'm just going to encourage you all to quote a page number so it's easier for Michael to refer to.
That's the page.
That's the page?
Yeah, that's one of them anyway. If you could perhaps go beyond to the existing condition, I think it'd be quite useful to see what the current condition is, please. I think it's three sheets along.
What page?
We don't have page numbers, unfortunately, but if you scroll beyond this point, they should all be together in sequence, I think.
Is that it? No.
We're back on the 5-page document.
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to be on the larger document that you just had.
Do you hear that, Michael? Larger document?
Could you tell me if it's
The landscape's right at the end, so if you want to scroll to the bottom, we can perhaps work our way up, because they don't have numbers, I'm afraid.
It's page 57 and 58 is about wind.
Yeah, keep going. 57, 58. Oh yes, I found it. Yeah. Okay, we can pick up on the screen. I can see it here as well. There we go.
It's also a different arrangement.
Yes, it's.
So that's the best way I can.
Michael, could you continue?
Oh.
Could you continue to the last slides, because they have the existing condition. It's a good starting point.
The last slide, Michael.
The last slide, 57 and 58.
Toby, can you help?
There you are. That's the one.
No,
that's
no.
The one.
Beyond that, there's
okay.
And again, please keep going. Oh,
No,
we've got them in.
It's actually just before, Jessica. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can we go back up?
It's the one before your annotation.
Which is logical. No, keep going up again.
It's 2.
I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to push you along a bit now.
Well, what we want to show, this one, if you could stop here. This is the existing condition.
All right. What are we seeing here, please? Could you explain?
Well, what you're seeing here is that the conditions around the site currently are very, very pleasant. What you want is green for anywhere that's a place that people want to remain for any time. The green signifies the conditions are good enough for that. So currently that's what we have in summer, which is really very pleasant. It's probably why the vinegar yard works quite well at the moment. The second image, if Michael, if you could scroll down, is winter. So you're getting into generally more windy conditions, so things are not as good. Oh, hang on, you've gone. Anyway, well, let's just press on. So I'm not actually, because it's on its side. Can you just give us the...
All right.
I can't see what that one is.
I can tell you, 1 second.
I think that's summer, isn't it?
That is summer season, yeah.
Yeah. So if you carry on down, I've just marked those up. So for clarity, we've shown we've used the applicant's own drawings, and that's winter. Can you scroll down again, please? So right, what we're saying,
yeah, please, yes,
is what you're looking for is green, and that means the conditions are good enough for sitting in. And if this is to be a new public realm that is to compensate local community for the impacts of the development, is to go some way towards mitigating the shortfall we have in this part of the borough of public realm and open space, and green space in particular. It's a known deficiency for the north of the borough. Then this space should be designed from the principle of creating good quality public realm from the outset, and with that you would expect the microclimate to make that viable. But unfortunately, the massing and the height of the buildings is such that the wind impacts around these spaces are not going to be good enough for that. This is summer, so it isn't the best possible conditions. You've still only got little snippets of green space, and they're not really where the main seating opportunity is, which is in that slug of blue that runs from top to bottom of the sheet. That's the main public realm offer that the developers are providing in their proposition, and that's not going to be good enough for sitting in, that's only for standing. So, and there's other areas which are yellow, which are actually quite problematic.
Right.
As well. And in winter, Michael, if you could go to the next one, please. There's extremes in a lot of those spaces, and I would highlight two things. We're just missing Fenning Street off the top of that image there, or at least I am. That's got some really dangerous impacts there. Those are deemed to be dangerous for vulnerable pedestrians and cyclists. We know full well that...
Forgive me, Jessica, when you say dangerous, do you mean the wind shear is particularly high? Or what do you mean by dangerous?
This is what it says in the report. All this done is done technically to certain criteria, and terminology is used, and we're just using the terminology from the reports, which are saying represent a potential safety concern for cyclists and elderly people. And I would just like to point out that I'm sure that Sellers' team assured you or your predecessors that the Shard was going to have no impact on St Thomas Street, or indeed it would be acceptable. And we all know how successful that's been. So I think you should treat a lot of these so-called mitigation propositions that are made to you with high degree of scepticism, because everybody knows that St Thomas Street is a failure at the moment in relation to wind, and the mitigation hasn't worked.
I'm keen for you to forgive me. Hold on. I'm keen that we remain and focus on the application at hand. If I may ask you a follow-up on that, noting the diagrams in front of us. If there were mitigations, what mitigation would you suggest are necessary to change the yellows to either blue or green? Well, what would you suggest?
Well, it's the wind shear you're getting is a consequence of the height and the massing of the buildings. So I would start again with a building envelope that doesn't present these impacts. You can't mitigate these impacts with a bit of tree planting. And you only have to look at the trees on Guy Street that have been replanted 3 times, I think. They don't like the wind either. You can't put a tree into a wind tunnel and expect it to do the job of mitigating wind. It's a fallacy.
Fair enough. Okay.
If I might add, leaving these things to details is against policy D2 of the London Plan, in the sense that you shouldn't leave these things to be dealt with afterwards in details, because they're fundamental to the performance of all these.
Thank you for that, Toby. We may put that question to the applicant. I now need to move things along a bit, if I may. I've got first of all Councillor Whittam, followed by Councillor Hargrove, and then with Councillor Morris. Councillor Whittam, please ask your question.
Can I just ask what the objection is to the music venue, please?
Yeah, sure. So we have some evidence from a local expert who says it should be better located to the west of the site, nearer to London Bridge.
Okay, and who's your expert that you have there?
Oh, sorry, they're not with us, but I can read out. I can read out two sentences of their thing. As someone whose entire career is based around writing music, working with musicians, and working with composers like Danny Boyle, I find it surreal to have. Sorry, this is about the consultation aspect of the music venue. I've never had any meaningful conversation with anyone about the plans for this building, despite attending and engaging regularly as I could. But his question is, why is it not located closer to the main transport hub so that it won't negatively impact Bermondsey Street? The other point to mention about it is the evidence from the Social Life Charter identified that what people needed in the area was community spaces for younger and older people, spaces for people to meet and do things, and there was no mention of a music venue being desired.
Okay, thank you. We've got that as a response, and thank you for that. Councillor Whittam, do you have a further question?
Sorry, I had a point of design about the music venue, which is just a direct quote from the design review panel.
Fair enough, go ahead.
Yeah. So specifically about the pavilion, and I welcome more questions about design in relation to the design review panel. They had some concerns about this. They felt the scale was excessive. They said it should be 2 stories, not 1 story. And they said that the building did not respond appropriately to its setting.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you, Councillor Whittam. I'll now move on to Councillor Hargrove. You have a question to the objector?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Toby. You mentioned quite the negligible benefits of the public area. Yeah, it's something that you said several times. And I just wondered, would you include in that as negligible benefits the number of jobs that this development could create, and also maybe the music venue, though I do hear your views on the music venue, and the potential of bringing new innovation into the area? Do you not consider those as public benefits?
Thank you, Councillor Hargrove. Who wishes to respond? Toby, Jessica, who is responding?
I can begin and say that yes, bringing jobs to the area is a public benefit. However, on the whole, as we said, we don't think that the public benefits outweigh the harm. Now, on the nature of the jobs provided, it's worth saying that the future of offices in this new post-COVID-19 situation hasn't been considered. So you now have situations where you have companies of 200, say, not having physical offices and working from home. People moving out, there are offices moving out of central London. Unilever is an example of this, where everyone's working from home. So this hasn't been taken into account. There's a question of whether we really need these offices which have been designed in the previous era that we're no longer in. Now,
okay. That's a theory, Chair, is it? That's your theory. Because there does need to be an economic recovery, doesn't there? Is that?
Yes, there does. Yeah. I think what we said all along is that you could provide all of these public benefits with less harm to both the historic environment and the wider environment. You can just have a slightly lower number of jobs, but you can still provide, 1,000 without having an 80-metre tall building. Is the basic.
Fair enough. Thank you. We've got the response. Thank you, Councillor Hargrove, and I'm going to accept that as your response. Thank you, Councillor Adele Morris. You have a question for the objector, Councillor Adele. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'll take this on. A question. Just wanted to briefly return to the issue of the kind of the public realm. And I'm mindful, Chair, that you partially asked the question, but I wanted to ask Jessica about, in particular, in the report, which you may or may not have in front of you, but there's a paragraph that talks about the scheme providing welcome hard landscaped public space. So it's been quite deliberately designed to have hard landscaped public space, and so that's been a specific design, and I wondered if you wanted to comment on that. And secondly, in terms of it also mentions a new forecourt that doubles as an extended public space outside the Horseshoe Inn, and I wonder if you could comment on what you think might be the usability of any public space outside the Horseshoe Inn, given what you've just talked about earlier on.
Councillor Morris, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Those are useful questions. I am quite concerned about the lack of green space on this project. There's a requirement in NSP 53 that says the open space will be secured for this space because London Bridge is deficient in parks and other green space, which the new space will address. It will mitigate the pressure from development on existing open space. The site is large enough to accommodate a meaningful open space at an achievable level. So I don't think this is open space, this public realm has been designed from the point of view of creating a good quality usable green space for people. I think it's a consequence of other commercial decisions that have driven, it's a vacuum, if you like, that's what's left in the middle. It's a relatively small area for a start. We put dimensions on the plan we provided. That shows you it's relatively small. It's actually probably equivalent to the space at the on London Bridge Street between the upper level of London Bridge Station and the newspaper building. And if you can visualize that for a moment, it's actually relatively small. Nothing ever happens in there. It's fairly windswept. It's not a successful space, and I think this one would be very similar. There's very few trees on this project, and the reason there's no trees is because there's a basement through to the whole extent of the site, which is incredibly greedy of the developers. They haven't allowed for any setbacks either on St Thomas Street or within the development themselves to allow for decent trees to go into the earth. These trees are in little planters. I think there's only going to be 4 trees, but I would also refer you to the lack of detail on these proposals. And I know you're not meant to refer to other applications, but the Edge application, whatever you think of its content, the detail in there on the landscape is what you should be getting here. There's far more detail. There's a really clear level of detail to tell you, and you can see what you're going to get. But this one's completely open to condition, which is unreasonable for a quality of a scheme of this importance. The landscape should be fully developed and detailed at this stage. So there's lots of questions that I think haven't been answered, and yet there's sweeping statements made in the officer's report about good quality public realm and widened pavements, and I'd point you to 2 things. Sorry, Toby?
Jessica, I just wanted to remind you about the problem with the accessibility on the east-west route, which is also not compromised by the lack of the other scheme.
Yeah, that's where I was going, actually. The St Thomas Street Master Plan has talked a lot about the importance of the east-west route, and it's referred to repeatedly, and it's referred to by the Design Review Panel as an important aspiration. But if you look at a close scrutiny, will show that east-west route actually has a 1 metre level change in it. And that's a large number of steps right in the centre of that route. It's not made explicit. It also narrows the route down. So there's no dimension given to the width of these stairs on any of the drawings that I could find. But it could be as little as 2 metres.
But it also might go through another applicant's land.
Okay, before you go any further.
And furthermore, on St Thomas Street, the what hasn't been made explicit, yes, the pavement might have been widened, but if you take, I think you should please ask the applicants, what is the width of the free area of pavement that will be generated on St Thomas Street once you've accounted for the trees and the cycle racks on the north edge, and then the columns of the building that project? I reckon it's about 2 metres, maybe 2.5.
We'll definitely ask the applicant that question, and there are no further questions for the committee. I want to thank you both and members of the.
Am I allowed to add one piece of additional information?
You may, of course, Amy. Yes.
Thank you so much. Just as the chair of the neighbourhood forum, we have around about 1,000 members. We cover the whole area of the area from that site all the way down to the Old Kent Road, basically. And I just want to highlight the fact of the people's lives that will be disrupted and affected by this. We have highlighted the planning issues. We've highlighted the fact that the massing is too big versus the NSP stipulations. And there are people who are living in all the council flats along the southern border of this, and in some flats along the northern border of this, just over the railway line, that will be significantly impacted by this massing and this build. You have Snowsfield School, which is going to be directly impacted for a 5-year build period. So you actually have primary school children who are going to be impacted in their playground and in their school lives on a daily basis for their entire primary school career. And I think we just need to think about the local people that are going to have to bear the brunt of this, the thousands of us that live in this area, and the fact that we do not believe, and our members do not believe, that the impacts are mitigated against, that any of what is being offered is going to make up for the detriment to our daily lives.
Thank you very much for that. And I see that I see Russell Gray, who has not spoken. So hold on, Russell, hold on. Let me do this. So I'm happy to let you speak, please. And if I give you a minute, I need to move the meeting forward, and we most probably will return to yourselves, because you have raised quite a number of interesting questions, but I'm sure the committee may well return to later on, once we've heard from the applicants, supporters and more councillors. So Russell, I'm giving you a minute just to say your piece. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it was very.
Oh, forgive me, Russell, but just for formality, just for the purpose of the clerk not intervening and telling me what to do, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Russell Gray. I established Old Bermondsey Neighbourhood Forum as a evolution of Bermondsey Village Action Group, which started about 10 years ago in response to the seller proposals then for 3 Shard satellites, as I did.
Thank you very much. Now, I'll give you a minute just to say your piece. Go ahead.
Okay, so mostly I just wanted to finish off what Toby was halfway through before he ran out of his 3 minutes, which is to point out that these 2 applications that were scheduled to be heard both today, seller and CIT, are absolutely inextricably interlinked. All consultation was about a public realm that was to be developed with the essential contribution of both. You'll see that the way this is being presented now depends on access across seller's land. If seller is out, this doesn't happen. It simply isn't possible to consider these 2 applications independently. And so predominantly what I would say is now there needs to be a revisit, and it needs to be a revisit to both in combination, not one by one. So apart from that, I think all the key points have already been made by my my colleagues in OBNF.
Very good. Thank you very much, Russell. Thank you very much for that. And as I said, as long as each of you stay available, we may well return to you when we're at the debate section of this meeting. So I want to thank you all for your contribution. You are the first neighbourhood forum we presented to committee. I was pleased that we gave you the opportunity to brief the committee earlier on, and I hope you found that useful. And of course, the committee has also benefited from visiting the site and familiarise themselves with the context which we are discussing. So I appreciate your contribution and your tremendous efforts to communicate local views to this committee. Thank you very much. I will now press on. I can't hear you. I'm going to move on now, Russell. I can't actually hear you, so it's okay. I'm going to move on. I'm now going to move on to the applicants, and if I can just double check with the clerk who is present. I believe we will have present. Are the applicants present? I give them a check. Please, Ewan Puffett and John Bushell.
Present. Yes, present.
Right here then. Just for formality, you've heard my style. Can I ask you both just to introduce yourself, titles, etc., just so we're clear who you are? Go ahead, please.
So Ewan Puffett from CIT, representing the Vinegar Yard scheme.
John Bushell, Design Principal of Architects, Cohn Pedersen Fox.
Excellent, thank you very much. I'm sure I don't need to explain how you make your presentation, but I'll give you both 3 minutes to make your presentation. At 30 seconds, I'd indicate that there are 30 seconds remaining. Yep. So,
Councillor Seaton, could I just raise before we start? Okay. We submitted some information in response to requests made by the earlier objector. So if we need to bring those up, we can do if it's relevant.
Chair, I have that presentation. I can share it if that's while you're speaking.
Well, if I may, first of all, if I may, I'm happy for you to make that presentation, to make your presentation, and I will prompt you at the end of your presentation your response to the objective inquiry as regards those views. So I prefer if you simply make your presentation so we get that out of the way, and we'll deal with your response to the objectives later on. I'll start the clock now. You may now begin your presentation.
Thank you. So thank you for your time this evening. I'm Ewan Puffett here on behalf of CIT. We have a track record in North Southwark with projects like Moor London and South Bank Tower. Please note that our building is fully compliant, including the Southwark site guidance for a significant building with height in this exact part of the St Thomas Street area.
We are committed to playing our part in the area's creativity, diversity and success. For Vinegar Yard, we've gone the extra mile to make the scheme relevant to local people and the borough's post-COVID recovery. William Austin and Southwark Studios will manage over 13,000 square feet of genuinely affordable creative space, a gallery and community space at £12 a square foot, locked in for 30 years and open to local people. Neil and Benj from Vinegar Yard Limited will curate our market hall, performance venue and public square with activities that bring the whole community together. And to deliver inclusive growth, Richard Tyree from Good People will support 250 local people into jobs from construction onwards. They are here to answer your questions, but I'll now hand over to John to talk about the scheme.
Vinegar Yard will be the front door to Southwark for the 90 million people who use London Bridge Station every year. But our design must also knit the site back into Old Bermondsey and deliver for its communities, and we try and do both. To make sure it does, we've been through a full and responsive planning and public consultation process with nearly 30 events and meetings, and we can assure you we have made lots of changes to our scheme as a result. We're also fully engaged with the Social Regeneration Charter. As a result, we have a fantastic office building accommodating about 2,000 people. Proof of concept is that tenants like Guy's and St Thomas Hospital are already interested in taking space. But at the street level, it won't feel like an office at all. In fact, the office entrance is banished to the first floor. The whole of the lower floors are dedicated to arts, culture, food, affordable workspace, creating opportunities to start up and local businesses to operate in a mix of small retail settings. Inside and outside spaces are open and permeable with uses that support one another or curated by a local organisation. The space is designed to make it as flexible as possible for these uses. New Vinegar Yard is our newly beautifully delivered square with new trees and greenery both around the landscape and at the top of the building. Our building and landscape has a brick and warehouse aesthetic that reflects the character and history of Old Bermondsey. On sustainability, technical innovations like heat pumps get our carbon down by 46%, but we firmly commit to complying with the Paris Climate Agreement on carbon emissions. We will contribute directly to the borough £8.1 million in CIL, 3.6 in affordable office, and 5.3 million in business rates each year. We kindly ask you to consider the scheme on its own merits. Some of the discussions earlier have been seeing other schemes, not our own. We'll provide a place for residents, workers and visitors that bring them together. Thank you.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Are there questions, first of all, from the committee? First of all, could you indicate, please, the digital hand? I'd be most grateful if who wishes to ask a question. I believe Councillor Whittam had a question. Hang in. Yep, Councillor Whittam, go ahead.
Yes, I was just amazed that most of your site is outside the conservation area, but the one little bit that is inside the conservation area, you're going to bulldoze. How does that speak to me that you care about the conservation area?
Can we answer that in two parts? First myself and then my colleague Chris Mealy, who's a conservation expert.
Of course, go ahead.
In terms of the design of the building, we wanted to create this very open market hall for everyone and for it to be open from St Thomas Street and also from the route that actually runs east-west and means that the pub has new frontage. We therefore didn't plonk the lifts in the middle of the scheme, which would destroy that huge hall to one side, which then avoids overlooking. So instead of having any office windows looking at all of the residential, it's very carefully organised, so there's no overlooking problem at all. We've just discussed it's between a big station and a smaller area, so we've been very sensitive indeed to that. We set our building back from the south elevation to allow the pub to have much more space, and we're very aware that they are seeking to capitalise on that by suggestions of their own to reconfigure and to enlarge their premises. Perhaps I could now ask Chris Mealy just to complete that answer. Thank you.
Of course.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Chris Mealy. I'm partner at Montague Evans. I worked on the Heritage Townscape and Visual Impact Assessment. From the very beginning, we were mindful of the conservation area, worked closely with officers on it. And in relation to the building that councillor has asked about, as your own officer has pointed out, it's quite a significantly altered building. And also it's a site that lies on the edge of the conservation area in an area of mixed townscape. And I think councillors just need to bear in mind the complexity of the development that we're trying to deliver here and the range of uses, which make it, I think, practically challenging. And so the decision was taken to demolish that building in order to help with the delivery of the scheme overall, and at the same time to think about improvements to the parts of the conservation area that are abutting and where we now sit. So we felt on balance that there was a sound justification to demolish that building. Regrettably, we acknowledge the fact that it causes a degree of harm, but invite the council really to consider the matter on balance.
Surely the fact that it's been altered over time shows its history and shows the changing uses within the conservation area. So to just sweep that away is very harsh.
That's a very, very good point, and it's absolutely right to make it. The history of change in a building does demonstrate, or changes to a building and alterations can demonstrate its historical interest in the passage of time. Obviously, some of these changes have not been very sympathetic, it must be said. So it isn't a building, I think, whose record of change over time is now particularly attractive. It's been harshly treated in the past, not by our client. And again, so overall, we felt it was the right thing to do to achieve a good balance of uses across the site and the right design.
And to say that it, can I just say one thing?
Forgive me, Councillor, but can I encourage you please to put a question forward? We can talk about opinions later on, but if I can deal with questions now, please.
I just wanted to say that being in the conservation area is a bit like like being pregnant. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either in or you're out.
Indeed.
That is.
But I'm going to take that later on. If I can take that later on. No, I'm not going to. Okay, go ahead.
Do you want me to respond?
Briefly, obviously, sometimes there's juxtaposition. You've got a London Bridge station next to a historic area, and we're in between the two. The juxtaposition means that we have meant that the whole of the base of our building, a huge volume, has open and public, etc. So we believe that we've responded in a very strong way to the grain and the activity and the continuity of the spaces.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. I would ask questions, but after my colleagues have answered their questions, if I may now move on to Councillor Catherine Rose.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions. In relation to the aspirations of the NFP 51.
Forgive me, Councillor Rose, and I always seem to do it at the point at which you're about to contribute. I notice it's 9 o'clock. I've agreed that hourly we will take an intermission. So it's 8:57. I wish to take a 5-minute intermission. So we will break for 5 minutes. So thank you. Forgive me, Councillor Rose. Okay.
No, I shall be ever known as the comfort break councillor from now on in. That's fine. I'll see you later.
Oh, mark your words. Okay.